Harda, our son, Christa Kundi Ardwaka, Faram Falsho Kelly Griv on O'Cage Starul Nucht. On behalf of Armagh County Board, it is a privilege for me to be here tonight to welcome you all, to welcome our panellists, and of course to welcome our sponsor of Linwoods Armagh TV, John agus Winnie Woods. You are very welcome. Not alone that, but I do see a lot of our patrons and our other sponsors here tonight, so thank you. We are looking forward, of course, to a fantastic evening of crack, and of course we're looking forward to an Armagh winning Sunday. That's set aside, but I just want to say finally thank you to the guys of Armagh TV who are leading the way in everything as regards promotion of our games, our food and Natira. Without further ado, I have one other guest to welcome. I want to welcome one of our own, a young singer from Whitecross, Kalisha Nidul, daughter of James Doyle and granddaughter of the one and only Sean Reevy from Whitecross. So I'd like you to give a Bula Boss more to Kalisha O'Doul, who's going to start the proceedings off with the R on Cahalín ar Fad.
Feel our no, feel our no snaimium, feel our makishlas store, agis chivi tu na glor. Mailen tu Iol mishali saos Moi chagran noi gadara gume Sneakin in toish go foil Maran sagrato donal Novenister. Feel our no, feel our no snaimium, feel our makishlas store, agis. Chiefy to na glor, mailen to Jolty to padaris pol, Mariala non serenadegit, Jolty to banrin na glor, agis. Chimpy to kota, Novenister. Feel our no, feel our no snaimium, feel our makishlas store. Agis chivi tu na glor, mailen tu.
Agat, Kalisha. I'd like to welcome you all, as Paul said, to the Navan Centre here in Armagh, joined by this array of talent to my left. They don't need any introduction, but I'll introduce them anyway. Paddy McKeever, after making his debut in 1998 against Down, Paddy enjoyed a glittering career in the Orange of Armagh, scoring 7 goals and 144 points as he collected an All-Ireland, 7 Ulster titles and a National League medal. He was a great hit in this same show last year, and he was so good and so popular that he's been brought back again tonight. Martin McHugh of Donegal is a holder of 2 All-Star awards, as well as winning the Texaco Football of the Year in 1992 when he helped Donegal to their first All-Ireland senior title. voted Donegal's best ever footballer in a poll carried out by the Donegal Democrat. His proudest moment came when his son Mark followed in his footsteps by winning an All-Ireland with Donegal. He has unique insight into this game as a pundit with RTÉ and BBC, as well as the fact that he managed Cavan to the last Ulster title in 1997. Owen McConnon has appeared in more All-Ireland finals than anyone else in this room in his role as commentator with Radio Ulster. More importantly, he's here tonight as an authority on Cavan and Ulster football, so we'll have to see if he can give us any insights into Cavan's preparations for Sunday. And last but not least, Stevie McDonnell. 7 Ulster Championships and 3 All-Stars, plus the unique honour of captaining his county to a national title and also captaining his country against Australia in 3 international rule series. His best memory to date was his kicking the winning score in the All-Ireland win over Kerry in 2002 and also collecting an intermediate title with his club Killeedy. So you're all very welcome here tonight, gentlemen, and we'll get down to talking about the Armagh-Cavan game later on. But there's a lot of topics that engage the mind of followers of GAA, and one of them is the fact that players nowadays are supposed to be overtrained or trained too much. And Armagh manager Kieran McGeeney questioned this elite label that's frequently linked to the training commitments of inter-county footballers. So the question is, are amateur players overtrained or is it a myth? Paddy?
I think a certain age group probably are a wee bit overtrained on the basis that they've too many masters pulling them in different directions, so they're probably trying to please too many. I know Martin would have seen it this year. Martin was across the city at Jordanstown when I was at Queen's. But one of our biggest problems would have been somebody that was maybe an under-21 team and a senior team. Then they did their club football as well. And then obviously they were expected to do something with their varsity team too. So that age group, if somebody's very talented at that age, that's dangerous because they are being pulled in so many different directions and there can be an overtraining workload. Somebody that's specifically now a senior player, they obviously train very hard. Their lifestyle is probably more of a full-on sort of lifestyle, like a professional lifestyle, but I don't necessarily think they train like if you take elite athletes or professional boxers or whatever the case is that are doing the amount of training they're doing daily. I'm not sure if it's quite up the same level as that, but that one age group, there's probably an overload there.
Do they train more today than in your day, Martin?
They definitely do in Donegal anyway. I suppose maybe the difference in a way from our day is there was a lot more manual work being done than they are now with them. You know, we did a lot of our training maybe doing different things, farming and all that there, but that doesn't happen anymore with young people. But just thinking about the whole thing, you know, I think it would be great if somebody just won an All-Ireland training twice a week and then everybody in the country would be at it, or if somebody wants an All-Ireland playing 6 or 7 forwards or doing something different, it'll change the whole thing. But yeah, they definitely train a lot harder than I did anyway, you know, from weight training one night. They're at it every night, basically every night, and I suppose what's suffering is club football. And if you look at it, I suppose, and I was thinking about it, even games, you know, there's a game on this Sunday, there's no one to talk about it, hey. You know, things, it's just become a way, wanting the championship, maybe it was a winner take all in the championship, was a massive game and there were a big build up to it. Now it's just another game and we're waiting for maybe August bank holiday weekend before it starts. And I think that's maybe to look at the whole championship structures and everything else, because as the leader manager said, they train as hard maybe as everybody else, and they end up getting 2 games a year for all the physical training. So is there an answer to it? I would like to see club football, more club football being played, and players allowed to play club football, because you know they're not allowed to play club football when they're playing for the county. And I'd just like, maybe I'm managing the club team or anything else, but I'd like to see them playing more club football and maybe not as much training and play more games, because anybody can tell you, the best way to get fit is play games. But they're well worried about getting injured and everything else. So I don't know whether an answer for it. I see it, you know, I see them getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to a gym. And I suppose the big thing I wonder about, who's going to employ these people when they're county footballers, because they'll be leaving work early in the evening and everything else. You know, you need somebody really committed to football involvement to employ them. And look, they have to get jobs as well. So it's the way it is. That's the way it is. Even Kerry are training harder than they ever trained before.
They're fitter, Owen, or the better?
Yeah, of course they're fitter, but I don't know if they're better or not. But I mean, it's going back to elite counties who have the facilities, who have the panels, who have the money to train players to a very high level. And it's up to counties other than these elite counties to try and follow suit. And as Martin rightly says, if you're from Leitrim or Carlow or Dublin, your commitment to playing county football is exactly the same. But unfortunately, the resources that's available to you are not there, and it's very difficult for counties who don't have proper facilities, maybe panellists, and certainly finance. And that's a big problem. And I, like Martin, I don't know what the answer is. There is no answer to it as I see it. But definitely players are much fitter, leaner, meaner and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, is the football better is the real question. And I'm not sure that it is, but I would like to see, you know, I take Cavan for example. I know the sacrifices that guys are making in Cavan. We have 2 players from my own club on the panel. And one of them has got probably not a full game if you go right across the board between league and Dr. McKenna Cup, and neither of them are likely to feature on Sunday either. But the commitment and the sacrifices that these guys are making, one guy's in college in Dublin, the other guy's in college in Carlow, it's very, very difficult.
It's very difficult to juggle a full-time football career. Martin talked about being employed as easy enough, well, slightly easy enough if you're a student, but if you're in full-time employment and a full-time county football...
It was easy enough for your teacher.
No. Don't go there. A full-time employment and a full-time county player, how's that easy to juggle or not?
Well, it's becoming more and more difficult, isn't it? I know when you look back at the era that we all played in, you know, probably more so myself and Paddy, you know, you could see the level of commitment was getting stronger and stronger each year. And nowadays, as Martin said, you know, it's 6-7 days a week for any county player, and I think that's wrong. I certainly believe that the county players should be playing more club football as well. And when you look at the overall ratio of training sessions in comparison to matches, you're talking about 7-8 to 1 at the minute, at least. And you know, that's where the GA is wrong at the minute. Overall, I believe that it should be more matches and less training sessions. And as Martin rightly said, as a player, you enjoy yourself, you play the smile on your face, and you want to be out playing football and performing against players just equally as good as you, and you get that in matches more than what you do in training sessions. And you know, that's what I would like to see the GA further down the line, is encouraging more games and less training sessions. And I think if that ever happens, you know, you'll see the standard increasing and rising as well.
But you couldn't really argue that the skill level has dropped. You know, you go to a match and you still see great skills being employed, albeit done very fast paced. You take Tyrone last Sunday. Tyrone were skillful as any team you could hope to see. Absolutely.
Listen, there's no doubt in the ability and the skills of these players nowadays. You know, we'll always say that the game was played at a greater pace and by better players in our own areas, but that's not the case. You know, certainly the current day county footballer or even club footballer possess plenty of skills. The problem is their management teams allowing them to portray them and giving them the freedom to go and portray them.
Well, that brings on to the manager. Somebody said our managers are quoted saying that they're not in the entertainment business. You know, that they're out to win. Is there a danger if they're not entertaining that they could lose their audience? Crowds going to matches drop, things like that. Would that be a possibility, Owen?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a pressure job, manager's job, and they're, I suppose, guided by success. They want success. They want to be seen to be successful. I mean, I remember, and by the way, I won a junior championship medal with Lavi. I just want to be as good as these guys.
I was going to mess up. I was afraid of autograph hunters coming up there.
But even going back to that era, I mean, I hadn't a clue who picked the team. And that was the case for many, many years, and it didn't really matter. All you wanted to do was play football. It was all about the players, it was all about the game, but now it seems to be all about the managers. And it's the same right across the board in all codes. It's about the managers. You can look, it's wall to wall today on all national radio stations about what's happening in Old Trafford. It's all about the manager. And it's the same at county level, it's the same at club level. And unfortunately, a lot of clubs now, Kilcar are fortunate that there's somebody like Martin, you're involved in Killeavy. You know, that's good, where people from your own club get in and get involved. But more often than not, clubs may not have somebody with an ability or with the willingness to do the job. So they bring in an outside manager. A, he gets paid, and B, he has to get results. So ultimately the pressure is on the manager, which to me is wrong.
I was going to say who would want to be a manager, but then you have managed various teams, Cavan, for example, and club sides and university sides. Is there any difference between them, or is the intensity just the same? Or are you just a glutton?
I used to manage the club way back. I was player manager, but try managing it now, you see. You've no players or anything else there available to you because of county football at any level. You know, it's great to be producing county footballers, but when they're not there to be available to play. We have 6-star games in Donegal where you play without your county players, you know. And but look at, I think, you know what Owen has said there, the manager's under too much pressure. Like we read the papers today, it's Kieran McGuinney, Armagh. It's Rory Gallagher's Donegal. It's Jim Gavin's Dublin. That, in the past, that was never made. Nobody knew who was managing teams, who was picking teams. Just before my time played, selectors picked managers. So they're under a lot of pressure to deliver themselves. And so somebody said there's players that won matches and managers that lose matches. When they get beat, the manager's to blame. But I think that looking at it, and Stephen's right, is, and I don't blame Croke Park for this. I blame the clubs of the country that they haven't stood up and said, right, let's say stop. They're the people running the association. And the club football's fallen completely going everywhere. Now we look at the other thing. What happens when you don't have club football? You're not going to county football. And we look at county football at the minute. And many teams can win in All Ireland. Now you might say it was the same in the past in the 70s, only carrying thing. But the problem is that club football is getting worse everywhere. Because the same thing's happening in club football, where you only have a couple of teams in any county. You probably have one in Armagh for a long time. They can win a championship. So I think clubs have to stand up and be counted. They seem to be happy enough. And you look at it, Derry off the radar last week, another team gone. Cork hurlers look like gone. Where's it going to all end? We just have Dublin and Kerry playing All Ireland, and you might have Tipperary and Kilkenny playing hurling if we don't look after club football. Because if you haven't got club players and you haven't players develop club level, you're not going to have county footballers. And that's where the problem arises there. And I just think, I don't blame Croke Park. They actually tried the year to get a system, better system, and was was voted down by the counties, and that's by the clubs, you know. So I just think, looking at it, that it's great and everything else, and the whole TV and audience is great, and the money and everything else is great. But if you don't have club football, and we don't have the club football, you end up down the road, 10 years' time, we won't have county football. You know, and there's really, there's no enjoyment anymore. There's no in the county football at the minute. Just a game on, go and watch it. It's on TV, watch it, and that's the end of it. You know, I think most people feel like that. You know, there's not that same passion that was in it way back. Now they're training harder and they're working harder themselves and they're putting in the work. But the bottom line is that there's more counties falling off the radar at every level and going and going and going. And we go back to the early 90s when I would say take Ulster, where you had you had Derry, Down, you had Donegal, you had Armagh, you had Cavan, you had all these counties there, Tyrone, all near up one under 21. That's why Ulster football was that way. Or we look at then the 2000s when you had a lot of teams there in Ulster battling out for it. We were hoping that Tyrone's going to come good this year from an Ulster point of view and that they will actually battle.
I don't agree with
that. Are you sure about that? Picking up the word entertainment and managers. If managers are ruled by success, the first thing they do is employ the blanket defence, right? That ensures that the opposition scores as little as possible. But it's not easy in the eye if you're sitting and watching it, like Owen Sunday after Sunday, and playing it.
No, definitely not. I know from a club point of view, a lot of clubs started to adopt that, particularly clubs that maybe weren't perceived to be as good a footballing team as some of the other top teams. So automatically they think, well, we're going to have to be very hard to beat here. And I know from playing full forward the other time, it was a bloody nightmare. Just even trying to get any supply in, just that whole area that you wanted to play football in, it was just overpopulated with players. But there is logic in it as well. Like if you take Donegal, Jim McGuinness, take Cavan as well. When they first started out, they started with a defensive structure, so let's become hard to beat first. Tyrone the same. So I think when Donegal were starting, Jim McGuinness was getting sledged basically by all the punditry because it was ugly to watch and people didn't like it. Donegal's football then evolved. It didn't all come together straight away, so there was a balance struck, and their counter-attacking game, made them very good to watch. The same with Cavan. I think Mr. Brawley described it as the Black Death at one stage. But how their game has evolved now, and if you look at the scores that they're racking up this year as well. So there has to be a balance as well. Tyrone perfectly illustrated last week. that they are playing with sweepers. They are playing with enough men back, but the pace that they break at, you know, it is good to watch. Like, but it also creates, with them sitting back, it ultimately leaves, because they're patient enough to let teams come onto them, knowing that they can turn them over in the final third or in that middle third. There's enough space to exploit at the other end. So they're having their 3-on-4 or 3v3 in an ideal situation, and they're able to play that ball in. So I think most teams, yeah, I agree that there has to be a defensive structure, and you need to put it in first. But you need to also be more expansive. And I think a lot of, Stevie talked about, you know, we're talking about the standard of players. A lot of players are afraid now to do, you know, to make that long 50-yard kick pass. They come in and somebody will give them a stat. Well, you've had 4 turnovers here, Jimmy. You know, 4 turnovers. But one of your balls probably ended in a goal or whatever the case was. But people are nearly afraid, so they give the safe option. They're running, they're hand passing, so it's a percentage game, which isn't attractive to watch. I wouldn't personally encourage it, although I do believe you need a defensive structure in there as well. But I think that's where it takes away from the entertainment, that players like the Gooch or whatever, they're now becoming more part of a system, that they're not being able to express themselves the same way that maybe players were given that liberty, you know, years ago, that you could be a wee bit inventive.
There was a couple of things not there. You were talking about the Gooch, which made me think of Kerry and defence. One of the great advocates of free-flowing football and calling Ulster football puke football was Pat Spillane, and yet Pat Spillane caught more balls inside his own 21-yard line, as did Jack O'Shea, but then that was looked upon as defensive play.
Yeah, but some of the southern media, unfortunately, when they look northwards, what we do, they end up replicating. But at the time, because we were beating them, they didn't like it. So they thought it was unattractive, they thought it was cynical. But Kerry are as cynical as anybody else. They've had to adapt with the times. Dublin had to change their game after they got beat by Donegal, because they basically wanted to play total football with no regard for anything else. Now Ken O'Sullivan is their, you know, he's their resident sweeper all the time. Now they still are probably the more attacking, expansive team in Ireland, but they had to learn as well, because they were getting turned over by the likes of Donegal, which shows that if you have a system in place, you can beat any of these bigger teams. So I just think when it suited them to be negative or critical, that was fine. But when they were getting beat, they realised, well, maybe these boys have a point here. And then they changed in suit.
Should it be banned? Should the sweeper be banned in underage football? I'll tell you what I think of it. My granddaughter was playing an under-12 girls match against a team who employed a sweeper.
Yeah. I think that there's going to be a sweeper coming into an all-star now. You'll name a sweeper as well as everything else. Every team plays with a sweeper in the place. But I think just looking at it from Dublin's point of view in that famous game against Donegal, I mean, they were naive as anything, Dublin. They just sucked in and they stupidly followed it. And they'd have time, the chance to sort it out, and they still didn't sort it out, you know. Now it took them a year to get it right, and now they've got it right. I'd say, and I'm going to say on the way Tyrone played last Sunday, Dublin would hammer them. The way they played last Sunday. Now, Mickey Hart will change his team going to Croke Park if he ends up meeting Dublin, but I thought Tyrone were very, very defensive last Sunday. And you know, they say they did enough to do it, but against a better team with the way they played last Sunday, a defensive played, and I think there'll be bigger tests down the road for them. But sweeper's been banned. Sweeper's going to be there, and that's it. And it's dealing with how to deal with a sweeper, getting Woods to your team or getting anything else. But if we take the likes of Stevie there, who was playing inside forward line all the time, or Peter Cannon and them players, you know, there's two things out of it. Why teams have to play sweepers? Because everybody's to give their full back line protection, because the full back line anymore don't know how to mark, because they don't have to do that anymore. And in our time, the full backs had a cornerback had to mark the corner forward. Now he doesn't have to do it anymore. But if you know the likes of, the one thing we miss is that this inside forward that can, like, you know, the likes of Stevie, 2-footed, brilliant, you know, Brennan Flynn and Meath, Peter Cannon, these players are great to watch them, you know. And it's just, that's the thing that we're missing in Gaelic football. Now it's about kicking long range points if you can, and going, and as Paddy said, percentage, keep the ball, hold the ball. And Kerry are doing it because they felt in that All-Ireland final against Donegal, and they got their tactics right. They worked on it and they got their tactics right. They sat and let Donegal come on and met them on the stage, and Donegal, it was great against Dublin because Dublin pushed up on Donegal, and now teams are all doing it, and it was going to happen. Like, Donegal got away with it for a year and got an All-Ireland, fair play to them. Maybe at a big cost, because it definitely changed football. And no better again, Jim McGuinness is over at Celtic and he changed Gaelic football, and now he's actually changed hurling as well, because there are sweepers in hurling now as well, and everybody's going mad. The whole boys are going mad about hurling. But so that's it.
Martin's point there, it stifles the good player, does it? Will it put the good player off playing football?
Well, one example of a good player, a great player, retiring because of current systems of play is Benny Coulter. You know, he's openly admitted that is pure frustration with how he was being double, triple marked on occasions, on playing in the inside line and not having the freedom to express himself. It just took the fun element out of playing county football for him. So, you know, he's maybe one of a number of players, and I think, you know, the top class forwards, they will get more and more frustrated as time goes on, and as these systems develop, and you'll see less and less players playing into their late 20s, early 30s, you know, when they're playing in the inside lines in particular. The likes of Colin Cooper, if he had have been born 5 years later, would he still be playing, you know, in a couple of years' time? I don't think he would be.
What about Jamie Clark? I mean, top forward.
Well, exactly. Jamie's another example, is the frustration that Jamie's feeling at the minute, and down to the fact that, you know, he's not able to express his full array of talents and go and play football, a one-on-one situation, you know, and that's what you want to try to do as a county footballer. You want to challenge yourself against the man that you're marking, but, you know, as a forward, you're going in and you're ultimately marking 2 or 3 men nowadays, and not one of them being close to you as well. They're marking space.
Well, we'll move on from the defensive play to the county and provincial championship. There are 4 teams already out: Antrim, Carlow, Wicklow and Longford, and they're now going to sit and wait for 6 weeks before they start again. Should there be a change to the current system so that we can deliver the best possible championship?
Well, I mean, if it was the old regime of years ago, they'd be out till next year. So, I mean, the back door is what's allegedly put in place, or not allegedly, it is in place to facilitate teams. But I suppose the real question, does it matter at the end of the day? I mean, they will train and disrupt club football for another 6 or 8 weeks to probably get beaten anyway. I'm not sure that the system is right, and I know that Martin came up with an idea many years ago that nobody seems to be buying into, which he'll probably talk about a little bit later on. But, I mean, it's the whole structure. Do you play your provincial championships on a knockout basis as before and start afresh for an All-Ireland series? I mean, what is the question? I mean, getting answers is the real thing, and there should be trial and error. If somebody like Martin McHugh or Paddy or any of these guys come up with an idea, these guys that have played football, if they come up with an idea and they say, look, I think this is a good idea and it should be looked at, I just get the feeling that a lot of ideas don't be looked at. And I mean, I wouldn't be an advocate maybe of scrapping the provincial championships, but there has to be another way or another route other than what you would call the qualifiers or the backdoor system or whatever. And anyway, ultimately, it doesn't matter, because the better teams are going to go. For example, if one of the top teams are beaten in the first round of the championship, what happens? They come back in the back door. And you go on and possibly win the All-Ireland, as we've seen it happen before. So it's no advantage to weaker teams, absolutely none whatsoever.
It's only postponing the inevitable for the weaker team, is it not? You know, you could beat one match and you go out and get another, doing later on.
Johnny McGee, the Wicklow manager, said that Clare hurling had more in their backroom team than he had at training. So that's it. So where are you going, like, with the county? So I believe in the system of 8 groups of 4, and that gives every team 3 games. Now you can say, you know, and the big, every team will be competitive, and seeded the teams on the league, which would leave the league a better combination. We look at the Ulster Championship's the only championship in football, and the Munster Championship's the only championship in football in hurling, sorry, and that's what you have, and it's very competitive and everything else. But, you know, and I know we can say that we ended up winning All Irelands by winning Ulster, but definitely Kerry, especially Kerry and Cork, but Kerry have a big advantage, having only played 1 game in there in Croke Park, very, very fresh, where an Ulster team maybe in the preliminary round, hey, it's great and everything else, but it's an unfair system that some teams will play that amount of games in the exact same competition to get to a stage where Kerry play 1 game in the quarter-final. So they can peak. So, you know, you take a team, say if Donegal's playing, just say Armagh or here in the first round or whatever, the preliminary round, you have to peak for that there. where Kerry and Dublin are probably peaking for Bank Holiday August weekend. As anybody knows, it's nearly impossible to do. So the system is wrong anyway. And you can say keep the Ulster Championship, keep it as great and everything else to have it, and it's great competition and everything else. But if you want to win the All-Ireland bigger level, you definitely is a disadvantage, you know. It is a disadvantage, the fact is the way it is now.
The back door came at the wrong time for Armagh, Paddy. I know it's a while ago now, but it still rankles, doesn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it does. It obviously worked out. You're obviously referring to the fact that Tyrone came back and beat us at latter stages. The back door has probably worked to a certain degree, but it does. I think the biggest thing that the boys are saying is the training, the play ratio is wrong. They're talking about there's only so many teams that can win the Sam Maguire. Unfortunately for some of the teams, I think there was muted that there was going to be a secondary cup, but everybody still loves the mystique that there is a possibility of winning the Sam Maguire, but the reality of it is that there isn't. So they should be able to, in some way, I think the league needs to have more onus, that your league placings then qualify you for the Sam Maguire. What exactly those parameters are, and there should be a secondary cup that is given, its proper placing in the calendar, whether it's played on the same day as the senior final. You know, that teams are, if they're going to train, like as Owen pointed out, there's lads there that are training maybe for the last 2-3 months and they've played one game. Like, that doesn't work, and it obviously doesn't fit with the rest of the GA calendar what Martin was chatting about as far as club football goes. So when it was put up Congress this year, it was just stonewalled straight away. Like. So they do have to change it. Like, the backdoor system did seem to work for a while. There was a team every year that got in a run, including ourselves there a few seasons ago. But I think it's time to tweak it again and to change it because it's not working for the vast majority of teams. It's given one of the big teams an extra chance. Like, if you take Armagh, Cross McGlen, we can't beat them once in 1 year. Never mind have a back door in our own club system. Who voted that in? Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But it's true, like.
The National League used to be all answers on a postcard, that last one. The National League used to be, in the old days, used to be before Christmas, right, where you played 3 matches, right, and then after Christmas it started up again. But now, once the National League starts, that is actually the championship, Martin.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Teams are getting ready from the December, probably getting ready for it. And that's, the National League is very big. You know, you take Division 1 of the National League, and probably at the minute you'd say, maybe our math people will not agree with us on Sunday, but you'd think that with Tyrone and Cavan coming up the way they've been, that you have the probably top, in the minute, 8 teams in the country in Division 1. But the problem is, staying in Division 1, and that's important, and that's why teams have to, you know, even the Kerrys have to get ready for it now. We're wanting way back, they just lost the games before Christmas and won enough, but it's different now. Yeah, the National League is a big competition, and it should be, Paddy's right there, it should be some way tied into the championship. And I think if you had, in my opinion, the 8 groups of 4 where the top 8 teams in that division are seated in the division, then you've great games, and have them at, you know, say have Kerry coming to Armagh or Kerry coming to Donegal, or you know, games like that there where I think it'll give the whole thing a great lift. And you know, I have an idea about club football as well. I've always said it, that the 2 semi-finalists in Ulster, and you might see you get dates where you will get time for them to play them. The 2 semi-finalists, say in Donegal or Cavan or Armagh, go through to the first round of the Ulster, and it's you have your home venues where you get big games played in club areas to start promoting the whole GAA. It's about the club and getting games where, you know, you could have, say, Cross McGlen coming to play us in our club or something like that. That's what keeps the whole thing going. People will know that on the ground, but at the minute it's not happening. It's all about money, and it's all about Dublin. Basically, that's it, because they're getting the money, and everybody's happy enough with that, because as long as Dublin are there, the GAA are happy. But if Dublin, all of a sudden, the minor team got hammered the other day, but if Dublin went down, you'd see a change then. They'll be looking at it then, the GAA.
Well, your idea is right. Split them in 2.
High or 4.
To go back to the National League there for a second, I heard a quote from Rory Gallagher. Well, sure, I don't know that. He played on a Sunday depending if the match was on TG Cahir or not. If it was on TG Cahir, he played a different type of game than he would if there's no cameras at it. So in other words, he was really keeping his powder dry for the championship, because, as was said there earlier on, the National League is just getting ready for the big one down the road, and the big one down the road is the championship.
And I'll tell you, Rory Goller's no Irish, he didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't hear that, and Jimmy, now that's...
There's very few things you don't hear, I can tell
That's a
you.
good one.
Martin touched on there, is also the last provincial championship won.
Sorry?
Is also the last provincial championship in the true sense of the word.
Yeah, well, on the evidence of what we're experiencing and on the evidence of history and on, you know, every game is I mean, if you look at the Leinster Championships, if you look at Croke Park last Saturday evening, for example, a double-header, hurling and football, 13,000 people at it. The first championship match between Fermanagh and Antrim in Brewster Park in Enniskillen, 10,000 people paid in to that game. There's a mystique about the Ulster Championship. It's the unpredictability of the Ulster Championship. Now, sadly, from a spectator point of view, both games have been pretty poor so far, so we'd be hoping perhaps maybe on Sunday that we'll see a real cracking encounter. But people still want to go, people still want to be there, and conditions in Derry were very poor last Sunday, but people still turned out. There were 12 or 13,000 people there last weekend. But anybody can beat anybody on any given day, and that's the real, and let's come back to the point that the lads are making earlier. You've got to be up for this game. Your next biggest game is Sunday. Or if you're from Monaghan or down, your next biggest game is the following Sunday. And then you win that, then the next biggest game is your next game. Whereas Dublin and Kerry are just sitting down and they're going through the motions and preparing for an August bank holiday weekend. So yes, the answer to your question is Ulster Championship is still the championship.
The first two rounds this year, the favourites have won out, Fermanagh and last Sunday Tyrone. This Sunday, favourites are Cavan.
Already?
Oh no, just
I think this Sunday, on current form, you have to fancy Cavan. But, you know, it is the Ulster Championship. It is unpredictable. And Armagh should have a lot of hurt from previous defeats of travelling to Cavan. I also believe that there's a huge incentive for both teams to win this game. Cavan to gain revenge on the National League defeat from Tyrone, and Armagh to have another challenge against Tyrone, given the rivalry that's been there over the last 12, 13 years. So, you know, I don't believe that Armagh is going to go over to Breffni Park and be any means give them a walkover or anything, but I think it's going to be competitive. And to call a winner, you know, at the start of the week I would have certainly said Cavan without a shadow of a doubt, but as I said to Owen earlier on, the closer it gets to the game, the more excited I'm getting about Armagh's chances, and I would never rule Armagh out. I always believe that, you know, they are a good championship team. They can produce big performances, and maybe Sunday we might see that.
many times they've met in 4 years, on familiarity breeding contempt, possibly, is it?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, they've got to know each other. And Cavan, I mean, they've played, this will be the third meeting this year.
Is that a commentator's phrase? They've got to know each other?
Well, absolutely. No, but there's no, apart from the flag incident, there's been no real bad blood between Cavan and Armagh. And Cavan would have had the upper hand, obviously, but I remember the last time I was on a panel here, Cavan lost the last week, so I hope the same's not going to happen again. But yeah, as you get closer to the event, and going back to the Rory Gallagher incident about T.G. Cahir, many people will say that Kieran McGeaney didn't show his hand in Kingspan Breffni Park either. That 17 points defeat is just, which is a load of rubbish anyway, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, familiarity will breed contempt, but look, they know each other, the management will know each other, they know who the key players are, they know how to counteract each other, and it's all on the day. Cavan are favourites, yes, that can't be disputed. But it will be all on the day. Who turns up, who shows up best, who has the heart, who has the will. And I suppose it'll come down to talent ultimately, who have the better players. And you would have to think possibly on the evidence of the National League, Cavan playing a different completely brand of football, probably have the better players. But if you look at the way that Armagh finished the league, I think Armagh are very, very unlucky, or were very unlucky to get relegated. Because they did put in some fine performances. And you can be rest assured they'll do the same again on Sunday.
Discipline will be a big thing on Sunday, Martin.
Yeah, discipline's always a big thing. I was just thinking about, listening to Owen there when I was thinking about and I was manager in Cavan. There was a fellow, Donald Cogan's a good friend of mine, but we were chatting about fitness and everything else. But PG Carroll was managing Cavan before I went out, and one day he was playing Donald anyway, and he always wanted well, you know, always wanted well. And Stephen King was another player who always wanted well, the two of them. But I think anyway, there's two different stories here. But one was one day he took Stephen King off, and PG put on Donald Cogan, you know. And there was Phil Masters, a great character in Cavan. He was a bit of a character, and he had a bar, and some of the boys went back to the bar, and he said, "What about today anyway?" Well, he says, "How could we win?" He says, "He took off a barrel of Guinness and he put on a barrel of Tennant's." but the other one that PG told about Donald Cogan, he was out playing the field anyway, Donald, and PG shouts out to him, "Donald, warm up, you're coming off." So the level of fitness wasn't as good that as it is now. But discipline will be very important, yeah, and I think they're maybe going to take a band up from Dublin. It might help a wee bit to have a different band, the marching right behind a different band. But discipline will be very, 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 very important, and the referee will be very important. How, you know, especially early on in the match. But listen, I'm looking forward to it because you know, I know Cavan well as an Ulster Championship match, and you know, as you said, it didn't start well. Now, analysing, looking at it, and there's two of the great Armagh forwards sitting here, and forwards probably won matches, and that's where I'll be fearful for Armagh. I don't know, have Armagh got the forwards now? They'll tell me on Sunday, maybe these men can tell me differently, but that's what it'll be important to do that, because you know, it's a different game, but it's important. And the one thing I'll say though, the Tyrone game, I would say, knocked the stuffing out of Cavan a lot, because they had won that game nearly in Croke Park, and they didn't. Now, how things are going since that, be important from Tyrone's point of view, or Cavan's point of view, how they recovered from that, because important, a bunch of young fellas. That maybe the Tyrone game gave them big heart last week, how well Tyrone played, that maybe Cavan said we weren't that far away from them, and if Shani Johnson had maybe play any that day, would have made a difference. The Garage McKiernan one is going to be a big one in the game. I think how Armagh cope with him and how he plays. I think he's a big, big player for them, for Cavan. Big player. Yeah, but come back to discipline, because free kicks are very, very important at the minute in games because of the blanket defences, and that free kicks are important. Whether it's goalkeepers kicking them or outfield players kicking them or out of the hand, they're very, very important, yeah.
Cavan's preparations are looking very good, way off to the Algarve, and collective training apparently. Owen ran a couple of big nights for them there, but they're certainly leaving no stone unturned.
It's the first I heard of that now, because Cavan probably would have been noted for not opening the purse strings that often, in fairness. But
I'm getting your fee tonight.
it's not a lot. No, they obviously are. They're on an upward curve, you know. It's much documented about all their underage success, so they're starting to see, like, we have to start making inroads. Now, Martin thought that probably Cavan were close enough to Tyrone. I thought Cavan never thought they were winning that game. That was just me personally. It just looked like a team that had accepted nearly before the match, even though you can say it verbally and everything else that you're going to go out and win, that they had accepted that they were an inferior team to Tyrone. I'd nearly go as far to say that Armagh would put a better game up to Tyrone than Cavan. Mightn't be good enough to beat them, but I think they definitely give them a stronger game or a stronger opposition. You were chatting about Jared McKiernan, like, and he's playing at number 11, and I think he scored 120 from play so far this year. But they have a lot more scoring options. They have a bigger spread of scoring. Their tallies as well have been, you know, they've been a lot larger than what Armagh have posted, you know, over the league. And that would be my biggest fear for Sunday, that we're going to need people that we haven't seen scoring regular in the National League or McKenna Cup, that they're going to be weighing in with 2 points, with 3 points. We're going to need goals. We can't rely on Soupy to carry the whole burden of the forward line, like Jimmy maybe was expected to do previously. So my biggest worry is what score we can post. And obviously we have to curtail Cavan because they have been posting big scores. So as Martin said, like, and it's probably in most games, forwards will ultimately are going to decide who wins or loses. They seem to have a bigger spread and maybe a higher potential to score than us, and that would be my biggest fear. But you're hoping that McHugh and McConnon is going to score 3. You're hoping that Kieran O'Hanlon's going to show how good he is, and you know he's working very hard in like a third midfielder role. But we need him scoring as well. we're obviously going to expect something soupy. Gavin McParlin needs to be hitting the net. You know, that's what we need if we're going to get a result in Breffni.
Is there too much pressure on Cavan? Boogies have them as favourites. Papers will have them as favourites. They've won under 21 championships prior coming up to this here. Those boys are expected now to perform on the big stage. Is there too much pressure on Cavan?
I don't think so, because even if you read the Irish news today, there's a quote from Terry Heinley, says pressure is for tires. And that's reflective through the players. And, you know, they learned a lot from, and I wouldn't totally agree with Paddy with regard that Cavan never felt they would win. I think it was a case that Tyrone never felt they would lose. And any time that Cavan got within striking distance, they pushed up a peg. It was a huge learning curve. A lot of those lads had never played in Croke Park before. And there was a huge expectation going to that game that Cavan might win that match. On the day, no complaints, Tyrone were the better team, and they've since proved how good they are. But I wouldn't say that there's no pressure on the players going into this match on Sunday. People expect Cavan to win, and obviously going into a match you want to win, but there is no pressure on the players. There's a panel of players there, and for the first time in a long time we can honestly say in Cavan that the best 26 players that will tog out on Sunday are they're the best 26 that's in the county. There is nobody else. In years gone by you had, well, you know, why is Eugene Keating not involved, or why is Shawnee Johnston not involved, or why has David Gibney left the panel? There's none of that anymore. Everybody that's a county panellist he has the best players in the county on the county panel, and they're absolutely under no pressure at all. They'll go out and they'll express themselves. They expect to win, and it would be in Cavan a big surprise if they lose.
Armagh expect to win as well, Stevie. Are Armagh hoping for too much when you think of the injuries that have been right through the National League, that they haven't had a settled team, and now they're coming in with a lot of experienced hands back again? Kieran McKeever, etc.
Yeah, well, Kieran McGeeney has had 8 weeks now from the last National League game to get the lads ready, and I'm sure the work that they've gone through over the last number of weeks has been huge in terms of benefiting the team, the overall team, and getting key players like the likes of Brenton Donaghy, Kieran McKeever back, having Andy Mallon back involved again. You know, they're the players that will ultimately drive the youngsters on. But, you know, Armagh certainly, if Cavan aren't under any pressure, Armagh certainly aren't under any. So we should be seeing and expecting a good free-flowing game of football. Will we get that or not remains to be seen. But I think Armagh have an opportunity to go throw off the shackles and express themselves. There is enough talent within the squad. I don't believe the talent has played to their maximum yet, especially not in the National League. But when Paddy mentioned the likes of McHugh McKenna, I think McHugh's the most creative player that we have playing at number 11. He is the best centre-half forward in Armagh. So, you know, he's capable of scoring 3-4 points a game, and if McHugh can chip in with those type of scores on Sunday, Armagh have a chance. Kieran O'Hanlon's another exciting player, a very athletic player who can get up and down the pitch, but, you know, on the forward aspect of things, equally capable of scoring points as well. I do believe, though, Armagh will require goals, and it boils down to goals, and unfortunately from an Armagh point of view, their greatest goal scorer isn't involved with the setup at the minute, which is Jamie. Stephen Campbell is a capable player and performed to an extremely high level throughout the National League, and has become a top bracket player for Armagh, the go-to player for Armagh. So will there be too much pressure on him individually? I'm not too sure. I think he seems to be able to handle it okay, but others have to you know, get in behind him and support him in the scoring act as well.
Very good. So on that positive note for Armagh, we'll move to our half-time break. Steve McDonnell, you had the last word there of the first half, so we'll let you start off the second. Armagh forwards didn't possibly perform as well as their supporters certainly would have liked. So Stephen Campbell was one player that you talked about.
Yeah.
Who else needs to step up the mark?
Well, I think Stephen Campbell, you know, was head and shoulders above any other forward that Armagh had playing throughout the National League. Not taking away from the other guys' performances, you know, maybe they were asked to do other jobs, but certainly weren't scoring as much as what Stephen was scoring. I think Tony Kernan is a big game player. He has to come good. You know, he's got all the relevant experience. You know, he's played in many massive games for Crossmaglen down through the years, and he's been with Armagh, you know, almost 10 years now. So I think, you know, some of the responsibility has to be passed across to Tony. That is, if he starts. Well, we mentioned Micheál McKenna. He is such a young lad, but he has a good head on his shoulders, you know, and he can play football. He's a very intelligent player, but he knows when to get in the right areas to take a score as well. You know, whether or not Ethan Rafferty starts in midfield or further up the pitch, or whether he's going to start at all, yeah, he's another player that's well capable of getting scores and taking some of the burden off Stephen Campbell as well. And, you know, there is players well able to score within Armagh. Sometimes I just believe that if Stephen is on form, they let him walk away without giving the backup that he deserves.
Cavan tried and trusted forwards.
Yeah, well, the whole team. I mean, if you look at the 15 that started against Tyrone, only one of the starting 15, and it wasn't the goalkeeper, didn't score in the league. They have 19 different scorers during the league campaign, and they're scoring very freely. Defenders are going forward happily, taking scores, which certainly wasn't the case in the past, where there was an over-reliance on one or two players. But, you know, you have Gareth McKiernan, you have David Givney, Michael Argue, you have Shawnee Johnston, Martin Riley, and then you have Tomas Carr, who effectively was almost gone off the panel, having made his debut in 2009. He's having his best season ever at midfield. The goalkeeper is scoring. So Kieran Brady was the only player that started against Tyrone that hadn't scored during the league campaign. So I think that statistic tells its own story, really.
Taking Owen's line there, Cavan are very comfortable in their own skins at the minute. You know, that's, with all due respect, that wasn't something you really associated with Cavan. You know, there was changes and different things like that, but this is a different outfit completely.
Well, I think the modern football, day football, and we talked about it earlier on about the sweeper. The sweeper's becoming, the goalkeeper is very important. They changed the goalkeeper last year, Cavan, and definitely a big help with the kickouts, which is very, very big part of Gaelic football. Because we look at it, would Dublin have won the All-Ireland without Cluxton? No. Would Donegal have won the All-Ireland without Paul Durkin? No. Maybe, why did Kerry lose in All-Ireland? Maybe All-Ireland's goalkeeper, which wouldn't be a big thing in Kerry, where other counties, maybe counties that have soccer or something stronger, would have better goal. Goalkeeper's a big player, and Cavan made a decision to put an outfield player and goals, and definitely has worked and helped them. And he's kicking the 45s, you know. So the goalkeeper is a massive player, but the sweeper is a big one. Now we look at the sweepers. Tyrone are using Colin Kavanagh from the middle of the field. Most other teams are not doing that. They're using the centre half back as the sweeper. And Conor Moyna is a prime example of it for Cavan. He's played as the sweeper. Now he's doing it for, we will come up against DCU and this year, Jordanstown. And it was interesting that the man that Stevie talked about there, Ethan Rafferty, who I had in Jordanstown. I remember when I was playing, I was running out after the father in the field, Columnstown. They'll tell you, I used to run after him in the field. It was the first game I've ever played with Donegal. He was marking me, Peter, and he was going up the field. And I was trying to tell the son about the father had a better left foot than the son. But Ethan's a great player. But we played DCU, is interesting, and he wasn't allowed to play that day. Ethan would be interesting if he had to play that day centre forward. He would have ended up marking Conor Moyna, which would be, for now, would have been a good test. We look at the sweeper now, where Armagh is going to are they going to make a decision to take the sweeper off Conor Moyna? Now, I thought Derry last week that they would have a decision made where they were taking the sweeper from. I think they were trying to play the other midfielder as a sweeper, but it didn't work. So the sweeper is a massive player in the modern day game, along with the goalkeeper. So where they take the sweeper from, but I'll tell you, an interesting one is Armagh people. Last year, Donegal played Armagh at the same stage last year in the championship. And our Donegal lads were training on the Saturday. And my boy Ryan arrived home and he says, "Hey Dad, I'm glad that Aaron Kieran's not playing. We're after watching the game last year. He was man of the match. And the following year he wasn't playing. You know, and he would be a big player to take the game if you had him playing. Now, no, that's... And I'm telling you, Donegal were glad he wasn't there the year later. Obviously, he was probably working on TV or something. But the thing about the whole thing is, and anybody will tell you about Gaelic football, and Derry didn't have it last Sunday, leaders. And will Armagh have leaders next Sunday? You know, Derry didn't go to war last Sunday. Armagh's going to have to make it a war. They're going to have to get out and say, this is what it's about. And do it right, you know. So that's the big things. But leaders on a football field, managers don't win football matches, players win football matches. And it's you see it everywhere when you see, we think managers, the minute you cross the line and you need leaders in that field, players to make that decision. Why did Armagh win in All-Ireland? Leaders. Why did Donegal win in All-Ireland? In 2012, they got leaders on a football field to make decisions in that football field. Have Armagh got them men to do that? Have Cavan? They didn't have it in Croke Park, probably. Have Cavan got that there? That's what's going to take you. Tyrone have it at the minute. That's what's going to take you. So that'll be the big question. It's the manager handing it over to them, and when you cross that line, that they make the right call on a football field, from the captain to everybody else.
The last met in the National League, 117 to 8 points. Cavan destroyed Armagh with kickouts. One aspect of it. Will Armagh have learnt enough? I know Owen said forget about that match, but you still will refer back to it in your mind to that match.
Yeah, it's a big swing, you know, to claw that back and to get ahead. Now, obviously, there's personnel changes. Armagh should be stronger. They've obviously improved towards the end of the National League. And what do you call it? I think I was chatting to Kieran just shortly after that match. Obviously, a lot of questions being asked of not just him, but the team in general. And he says, do you not remember being beat by Cavan by 16 points one day? And he goes, no. Can't remember getting beat by 16. You remember that? We actually did get beaten in Breffni one year. I think we went on to win those. Was it 2004? Yeah. I forgot all about that. It's wonder how you can blank that one out. But 16 points we get beat. So those wee blips happen at some stage, and it sort of has kick-started Armagh into something. And they were unlucky not to stay up, and we probably needed to stay up. But their performances have improved steadily. You know, the Tyrone result, they were probably lucky enough to get a draw, but it was still, you know, for confidence, morale, it was a big thing. And Martin said, you know, he talked about leaders on the pitch. The leaders that we have coming back, my only fear is they haven't had a load of game time. Like Stevie hinted about Brendan Donaghy, Andy Mallon, Kieran McKeever, some of the more senior lads there now. But they are like the drive and force behind that team as well. And you've seen it in the previous Cavan game as well. And I hope we have got a liberal referee, that he lets the game go a wee bit, because we're going to have to bring something to the party other than just football. There's going to have to be a fierceness in the way Armagh tackle, the way they tackle the ball, the way they approach it right from the start. Nothing to do with bands or flags or whatever, but they need to lay their marker down in Breffni straight away, because this Cavan team hasn't probably been tested by a more senior team. Their average age probably on
about 22, 23.
About 22, 23. They haven't been asked questions maybe in that aspect, and hopefully they will get asked that on Sunday. But I think that's what Armagh need to bring to the party as well. Yes, we're going to need scores, we're going to need everything else, but they need to bring an intensity to that match like they did in the athletic grounds in the previous encounter. And that's going to be important, and they'll need those leaders, the Kieran McKeevers, Brendan Donaghys, and the rest of the boys will follow with them.
I think one point, actually, going back to that league game in Cavan, Armagh were 3 points to no score up and playing really well. Look comfortable on the ball, were definitely the better team, and Cavan got a goal completely and totally, anybody can remember that, against their own play. And that changed the dynamics of the game completely. Had Armagh kicked on and got 2 or 3 more points, you would not know what would have happened in that game.
And the game that Paddy mentioned, 2004, I remember it clearly. It was actually the weekend after Cormac McDonnell was buried, God rest him, but we went, I think it was more than 16 points. They gave us a serious beating anyway, but we turned it around, and 16 points is a massive turnaround in Gaelic football. But we turned it around later on that year in the championship, and ended up kicking on and winning in Ulster. Two different type of Armagh teams, of course, but certainly Armagh and Kieran McGuinney will be reminding them of what happened 12 years ago.
Is there too much pressure on the players when they go out on Sunday that they've got to try and relax? Jimmy McKeever now would have been a great man for that. He didn't believe in thumping tables and kicking doors and things like that. He thought that your preparation had to begin in the change room, and that you walked out onto the field totally focused and ready to go.
I have no doubt that, you know, the angle that Kieran McGuinney will look at it will be a fearsome, intense angle. You know, myself and Paddy have been in many dressing rooms with him, and he becomes a different character come championship time. And I can assure you of one thing: when them players take to the pitch in Breffni Park on Sunday, they'll be well motivated and driven to put in a good, strong first 5-10 minutes anyway. And whatever happens after that, you know, remains to be seen. But I can assure you, they'll be ready for the start once that ball's thrown in.
Goals win matches, Owen. Who's going to score goals for this Cavan side?
Again, you know, Keating can score goals if he's playing. Shawnee Johnston, Martin Riley, Michael Argue, Liam Buchanan. They have a spread of players that can get goals. But I mean, it's the quality of ball going in. I mean, they threw the shackles off. I mean, they lost to Tyrone in the first game. A game they felt they should have got something out of, but that's history. The same happened again in Cavan, where they lost to Derry and had 3 chances to get a draw near the end of the game, which they didn't avail of. They were being hammered at half-time in the 3rd game against Meath, and nobody seems to know what happened that day. But that was the turning point. They went in 8 points down and they came out and won by 8. And ever since that, it's a completely different... Cavan were still in the old mould in the first 2 games, where they were afraid to go forward. But whatever happened in the Meath dressing room, where they came out and beat Meath, the rest is history. And it's from that point on that Cavan began to play a different type of football, a different style of play. They moved Killian Clark from full back out to midfield against Meath, and that made a significant difference. And then they began to realise, you know, these guys can score if we let them. I've seen players going forward, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, where you get a player from a club who will go into a county panel and buy into this defensive mode that a lot of these young players would have had. If you look at the under-21 teams over the year, it was all defensive. You look at those guys going back to their clubs, they're completely different players because they're not fitting in with the ethos and the way their club is playing. But that's all gone now. The defensive system, yes, the sweepers have been used. The defensive system is gone, and players are not afraid to have a pop, and that's the way it should be.
Is it a Division 1 team playing a Division 3 team on Sunday, or is that National League gone?
They say it's 2 Division 2 teams. They'll tell you in Cavan playing against each other.
That's exactly
right. I was laughing at, won't not mind me saying this, you know, but you know, there were Cavan people, and I landed down to manage Cavan way back. The one thing I learned down there: say nothing, do you hear more? That was the first thing I was told. And there's great old rivalry in Cavan and Monaghan, but I heard a joke the other day there about Cavan. What does a Cavan man do on a cold night? He sits by the fire. What does a Cavan man do on a very cold night? Very, very cold night. He lights the fire. Anyway, but
whose idea was it to bring me here tonight to put it in?
But yeah, it's. I'm looking forward to this game. I really am, because I know, even listening here, that Armagh are going to come to the table with something different. I think there was a lot of pressure in that Armagh team against Donegal last year. I think it was the same, but it's a different. This year is different for them, you know, because you know everybody expected Kieran McGinney to come in, and if you haven't got the footballers, the manager can only put structures in place and everything else. And you know, there's time. Every county has to rebuild and work on things like that there. But definitely this year seems different, you know, from my point of view. It's disappointing to be relegated in that, but you know, I'm looking forward to the game because it'll tell us a lot about both teams on Sunday. And that's the great thing about it, and that's the thing about Ulster Championship. And you know, it's I think somebody said, Paddy, early on that they're looking forward to playing Tyrone, either team, you know, in the next round, and they want to do that, and that's where you want to go. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I feel that Armagh or Cavan, to me, if I was asked to tip something, I'd tip Cavan, because I just think the forwards are the difference, and I just think, I know the lads here are saying about Armagh getting scores. I'm just fearful where they're going to get, where the scores are going to come from, because at the minute, you know, a lot of scores come from out the field. But I know Ethan Rafferty, I had him. He's as far as free kicks and that's concerned, his ability. I mean, he's as good a player that I ever worked with as a footballer. You know, and he's a big lad that can play football too, as well. But I really am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to going down there because, you know, when your own team's playing, you're always under pressure and watching everything else. I'm really looking forward to this match, and both teams are prepared really, really well. And, you know, we do need teams to compete. People talk about Donegal and Monaghan, we'll say, and Tyrone now. We do need other counties coming there to compete, and these are probably at the minute. You know, it's sad where Derry are, and it's looking sad where Down are at. I mean, we know great counties Like, that's sad where they're at, so hopefully, I don't know, maybe down, we'll be kicking down, but we need Armagh and at that table, and we need Cavan to come to that table to make it better, to have more Ulster teams.
It's a 20-man game, they say now. Who's got the strongest bench, do you think?
Owen was sort of scaring me when he was talking about the spread of scores there, but he mentioned the likes of Eugene Keating, who would get on most forward lines, and he's just outside the 15. The spread of scores, obviously, and then the aerial sort of advantage they have up front, like the Vargu, who's, 6'5", 6'6", Givney, 6'3", 6'4", McKiernan, 6'3", 6'4", but can all play ball as well. And then you've obviously Shawnee Johnson in the mix there. Cian Mackey as well. Is Cian still involved?
Yeah.
Like, there's a fella that would have been an automatic starter for Cavan in previous years, and this younger blood that's come through has sort of put him on the periphery, but like, he could still figure as well. So you're looking at backup there. Cavan would appear to hold all the cards as well. Like, Armagh do have a lot of good players, but they're all quite similar. They seem to have that same type of player in between the middle third, you know, your attacking wing backs, your wing forwards, or whatever the case is. Outside of Andy, have they got an out-and-out marking cornerback? Is Andy going to even play there? Up front as well, Staffan, obviously, he's moved into a full forward role, and he's excelling there. And Gab McParlin's been given his head this year, you know, whereas he probably was only getting limited time. You would probably say, on the face of it, Cavan's bench would look that bit stronger as well. But Rory Grugan's had a great year so far, you know. In trying circumstances, he's really showed leadership in the team as well. As Stevie could tell you, I had Kieran O'Hanlon at Killeavy, and Armagh people haven't seen him yet, and he's going really well at the moment. He's an excellent player. We talked about Mihal as well. So we do have potential there. It's just whether some of these lads that we haven't seen them step up and score 2 or 3, are they going to be able to do it against this Cavan system? But they're going to need, as Owen talked about, the spread of scores. Everybody bar corner back. All on this. He was a wing back even, and a goalkeeper scoring as well. You know, they seem to hold all the aces, but we're not travelling to Breffni to make up numbers.
Right, well then we'll take a one-word answer round. We'll ask him the easy one first. Who's going to win Sunday one?
Would I expect Cavan to win?
Yeah, Stevie. You can be honest now. You might get out of here, but you can be honest.
I'll say Cavan today and Armagh on Sunday.
Stevie.
Martin?
I expect Cavan to win it, yeah.
Oh, God.
You can be wrong, you can be wrong.
My head says Cavan, obviously, but I expect us maybe to spring a surprise.
Very good, right, well, we'll take that then. Who's going to win Ulster?
I think the performance of Tyrone last week proved, while Martin doesn't believe it was a great performance, that it wouldn't match Dublin, but it was the first round of the Ulster Championship, and it was certainly good enough to get them through it, and that's what it's all about. And I think Tyrone are the team in the up, and they will be the team that, you know, will win Ulster this year, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they haven't been beaten at all this year, and there's an influx of youth, and you have experience, and given the fact as well that they haven't won the title since 2010, I think that you'd be foolish to back against them, really.
2-0 at the minute.
2-0. Who's going to win Ulster? I think the best squad of players in Ulster, I think one of the best defence, I think they're the best keeper defence in Ireland, maybe still a wee bit in the middle of the field, is Monaghan. I really believe that. But I don't know how the belief enough. They don't seem to have a belief to beat Tyrone, but they beat them in under 21. So I just think at the minute the best squad of players in Ulster is Monaghan, and I think Monaghan will win Ulster. And I'm saying, I know people say I'm saying that, but I'm not saying that. If you're asking me an honest question, answering honestly, I think that Monaghan defence. Look at them, and sometimes they give them, to me, too much protection. They maybe should let it go a wee bit more. Now, they have a problem in the middle of the field when Owen Lennon went, but midfield's not as big a problem, and against Tyrone it wouldn't be as big a problem. I think Monaghan, with McManus, and I've worked with Kieran Hughes, and I would say one of the most talented players in the country, and Darren Hughes there, and with McManus going well, and they've lads come through the 91. I think Monaghan, if they believe enough in themselves, I think Monaghan won Ulster.
What's your one-word answer?
Sorry. Didn't ask me one word.
I'm going to give you a 5 or 6. I've tipped Tyrone already, but hope and pray that Donegal or Monaghan come through the other side and beat them.
Come on, Paddy.
Is that a plea or a prayer? That?
Bit of both. You asked me to be honest, so I'm just telling you.
Right, we'll go for one word answer this time then. All Ireland.
Tyrone.
Dublin.
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 Stevie, out in the zone as usual, out in the zone as usual. Just like to thank our panel here, and for those listening all across the world. I know there's people tuning in from Sacramento and Australia, and if you hang on about another 15 minutes, the team will be on the website at 9:30. That's the Armagh team to beat Cavan this Sunday. And we'll close the show as we opened it with the beautiful singing of Kalisha Ní Dúil.
Of all the money that dear I had, I've spent it in good company, and all the harm that dear I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit to memory now I can't recall. So feel to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Of all the comrades that dear I had, they are sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that dear I had, they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it has so ought to be, by a time to rise and a time to fall, come feel to me the parting glass. Good night.